Hey everybody, welcome to J Stern Designs. For Quick Tip Thursday, I'm going to show you how I put together the button vent at the bottom at the hem on my long shorts. I worked on my shorts yesterday, the long version, and I actually fell in love with them. I put the legs together, I fit them, and I worked on the button vent at the hem. And then after that was done, I tried them on, and I loved them so much that I actually wore them around town to do some errands and pick up the girls from various stuff yesterday, and I couldn't wait to get home and finish them. And I did. So you can see in front of me I have my waistband, and I used a antique real shell button for my closure because I just know I'm going to be wearing these like a uniform. The waistband details are already in a tutorial that I did, so I'll put a link to that video, so if you haven't seen that, you can see the details of how I put together this waistband. But the one thing I want to show you is on the inside, I had to do a little bit deeper of a seam allowance when I sewed the waistband to the actual top of the shorts, and because of that my facing was a little bit too wide. So what I did was, I want to see if I can find a spot where I can show you. I had finished the edge with a strip of printed cotton that I was going to just wrap around the edge so it would be showing like a bias binding. But then what I did was I pulled the whole thing and folded the whole thing under. So the edge is still finished by that strip of fabric. It's just you can't see it now because I had to make the waistband facing a little more narrow. But the one thing I want to say about that is it made it really easy to work with. I just pressed the seam allowances under and I pressed that strip flat so it's almost in there like a piece of interlining or interfacing, because it gives that little bit of stability to my waistband because I didn't interface my pieces. But it also made it really easy to get the edge of the waistband facing folded under neatly. So I was really kind of excited about that. You can see here, I folded more of it under here and then I let it back out as I came around after the closure side. And on the side with the zipper, you can see that, I was able to fold it under a perfect amount to be right at the base of, right at the top stop of my zipper. And then I let it down a little bit to cover the seam allowance of the waistband all the way around. And it really worked out nicely. The one thing I did notice after I sewed it is that my stitching on my bobbin side looks really yucky, and I think that's because I was using a needle that was too small for this fabric. So I am going to go back and fix that. So I'll give you an update on that next week about, having yucky bobbin tension and possibly it being the needle that caused the problem. But anyway, I really am in love with these. I'm going to finish the pattern, and it's going to include the short version and the longer version with the button vent. I still haven't sewn the buttons on. I'm going to use these cream colored buttons that I took off an old pair of shorts that I don't wear anymore. But I think that'll go nice with the shell button at the top. Okay, so for today what I want to show you is how I did the button vent at the hem. Once you fit your pattern in like a real life situation, I would probably do all this marking on the piece before I sew the side seams, because it's easier to sew buttonholes to the unconstructed leg. But I'm just going to do it like this because I'm trying to expedite the process of finishing these shorts so I can work on finishing the pattern. So basically what I have here is I have my shorts laying flat. This is the front. I've marked my 1-inch hem allowance. And what I'm going to do now, let me just show you inside. You can see that back extension for the vent lays flat, and that's where we're going to sew the buttons on. The front is folded right along the edge of where the seam is. So if I poke this up, you can see I've got the extension for the vent folded back on the side, and I've also finished the edge. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the position of 3 buttonholes. I want my buttonholes to be about 1/4 inch away from the folded edge. So the first thing I'm going to do is just draw a line up the edge that's 1/4 inch away. The space I have to put my buttonholes, or the opening of my vent, this is where my vent stops. And this is where the hem is going to be. So I have 4 1/4 inches that I can space my buttonholes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my first buttonhole 1 inch from my hem. So I'm just going to make a mark like that. And then I'm going to do the next two 1.25 inches away from each other. So I'll put my second one right here. And my third one will go right here. Okay, so they're going to start here at the intersection of my vertical guideline, and they're going to go this way. All right, so that's how I mark my buttonholes. Now I'm going to sew my buttonholes. All right, so now that I've sewn my buttonholes, I'm going to dot the holes with some fray check, and that will keep my stitching from fraying, or the fabric that's left inside the buttonhole from fraying after I cut open my buttonhole. Sometimes it gets stuck, glued shut, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a needle and I'm going to poke in there to reopen my hole. I have to do that almost every time I use my fray check. I'm just going to dot my fray check in inside my stitching like this. And I'm going to let that dry. Because I'm working with a fairly heavy khaki fabric, I'm also going to dot the inside of my buttonholes as well. And notice I was a little bit more generous on the inside because I want to cover the entire stitching and everything around the buttonhole just in case. You know, if it darkens the fabric a little bit, which happens sometimes, it won't be noticeable because it's on the inside. So on the front, I was really careful to stay within my stitching as much as possible, but on the inside, I fray checked it a little bit more liberally. Okay, so you can see it comes down at an angle like that. So when I do my top stitching, I'm going to come up and I'm going to create a V shape up to the seam. So I hold this down. So that's how I'm going to top stitch that. I just wanted to show you why I was going up at an angle. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of feel the shape of my, the inside of the vent. And you can see if I just drag my nails, it kind of shows me the shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch probably just maybe 1/8 of an inch away from the buttonhole, like that. And then I'm going to V up to my seam like this. To get a similar shape on the other side, I think what I'm going to do is line up my vents with my side seams like this, and then I'm going to pat it, and I think what that'll do is it'll transfer the chalk, and it does slightly so I can just barely see. So now I can transfer my line knowing it'll be the same height on both legs. So I'm just going to redraw my vertical line and my diagonal. Okay, so part of the purpose of this top stitching is to hold down the back side of the vent so it lays flat underneath like this. So if I pick it up, you can see. So the way I'm going to sew this is I'm going to stitch from here to the corner, just catching my front vent. And then when I go to stitch this diagonal line, I'm going to actually stitch through both layers of the vent so it lays flat. So I'm just going to sew through the front thickness here. When I get to here, I'm going to stop, take it out, line it up, and then I'm going to finish this so it sews through both layers, and that'll keep that laying flat. First I'm just going to stitch up to my diagonal line. Okay, take it out, turn it inside out, make sure everything's laying nice and flat, and put a pin. And let's finish that up. All right, let's look and see how that came out. Now everything is laying nice and flat, and when I open this, it only opens to here. Threads. So I've secured everything, and now my fray check is dry, so I can show you how to cut open these buttonholes. All right, so I'm going to use a eyelet cutter to make the hole at the tip of my buttonhole where I've got the keyhole opening. And you want to make sure that you don't cut through the back side of your pant leg, so push that out of the way. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to center it right in on the hole section, and I'm just going to twist it lightly and see how it makes that neat little hole. Okay, so I'm just going to repeat that for the other ones. All right, so now that I've got that, I can take my seam ripper and I'm going to start on the opposite end, and I'm just going to pierce my fabric, and I'm just going to slide right into the hole. And as I get a little bit closer, what I'm going to do to make sure I don't blow through the end of my buttonhole is I'm going to put the tip of my seam ripper up like that. You see? And that way I know I'm not going to cut through my hole because the tip is safely where I can see it. All right, so that's how I'm going to cut my buttonholes open. I'm just going to finish doing that. All right, I hope you enjoyed that quick tutorial. If you have any questions or comments about it, you can post them below or visit my blog at jstirlingdesigns.com. I really have to switch gears now to graduation related items because my daughter is graduating from East Catholic High School tonight, and it's very exciting. So I have to start getting some stuff ready for that. But I'll see you guys next week. I hope you have a great weekend, and thank you for joining me at J Stirling Designs.